Hi, welcome to Men TV. My name is Julie Corrieth. Today we're here with Rachel Dickson. Rachel's a mom, she's an author, she's an artist, and she's a survivor of family suicide. And I hope through Rachel's powerful story that you will be able to connect and to mend your own mental health journey. Something that we want to bring light to, and a conversation that we want to be able to start having past therapy doors and bring out into light is mental health. And so I would just love it if you could share your story and your journey around this.
So to preface this, I grew up in a really normal family. I grew up in Indiana, Midwest family, didn't have a whole lot of exposure to mental health issues until I was into my teens, really. When my grandmother on my father's side was diagnosed bipolar, and she never took the medication that was prescribed, and so she rapidly deteriorated. Just seeing that disease take hold of my grandmother, and when she died, because she had been living in our house, and it was really hard on my brother, my sister, and I, and my mom. When she died, it was almost like a relief. And that was a weird feeling to have. Yeah. But having seen what the disease did to her, and shortly after she died, my dad, so I must have been close to 15 or 16, my dad started showing signs of being bipolar. And little things like out of his norm. He was a very normal dad, like father figure, and he started doing things like collecting magnets and soap, and
did he take medicine when he started noticing signs?
And so I don't know if it was a pride thing or I have no idea. That was my first real exposure to what mental illness can do to a family in a period of 3 years. We went from being this very normal family to being not anymore. And at that time, my brother had been recruited for the Army, and so he had gone overseas, and he wasn't there for a lot of it. So, yeah, that was my first exposure to mental illness.
How did that change the trajectory of your life? Did you feel like you had any symptoms yourself, or that your brother or anybody in your family?
So I never thought my brother had any issues. It opened my eyes to the fact that some of these things are genetic, and yes, I need to have control over myself and how I handle things in my life, and making sure I'm in tune to things that are going on in my mind. I didn't think that my life was abnormal.
Right. And when did you start to feel like that shifted?
I got a phone call while I was on my trip home to Texas, and it was my mom, and she was screaming on the phone to me, telling me that my brother had died. And she didn't know how, and so she was just crying, saying that her baby had died.
Because at this point, once again, you don't know how he died.
Yeah. And so it took like me making phone calls to morgues. I had to call like 3 from the area that he lived in, and finding out where he was and asking them how it happened. And they told me that he had committed suicide and he had hung himself. And
so sorry.
I didn't believe it, and I didn't grasp it, and knowing that I needed to get home, I was at the airport at this point. I needed to get home to be with my mom. My sister didn't even know yet. And it just didn't feel real. And there was a lot of me waiting for the flight on the floor of the airport and just kicking and screaming, and like, it did not make sense to me.
Did it not make sense because he didn't show any signs?
Yeah,
of
he
somebody?
did not.
Okay.
He was my big brother, and he was so proud of me all the time, and we talked really regularly, and it was a shock, and it was so surprising, and one of those things where I did not want to believe that had happened, and so yeah, it did feel like it came out of nowhere. I was given all of the information, and I became the person who was in charge of his estate. And so I feel like I woke up the next morning and I had to be the strong one, and the one who is figuring out, what do we do with his remains, and what do we do with his apartment, and how do we tell his employer? It was a series of doing things and having this agenda. And then after a month and all those things are done, I just thought, okay, it's been a month. I need to go back to work, and I need to, not make this a big thing. I still really wanted to excel in my career. And
did you get a lot of questions around your brother and committing suicide? Did anybody worry about you after that? Did you worry about you after that?
So a lot of people worried about me, and I had a lot of people reach out. But suicide is this very finicky topic where people are really nervous about it. And if I were to come out and say it to someone, my brother passed away recently, how did, I don't, and a lot of times I don't think people ask, how did they die? Right. But in some cases, oh my gosh, was he sick? Right. Or no, he committed suicide. And first of all, committed suicide is such a harsh term because it makes it sound like suicide is something that, it's just so frowned upon. Right. And it's such a hard topic, and people don't know how to respond. And so that would be just an immediate conversation ender, stale air between us. He committed suicide. People are like, oh, and then when you hear of someone committed suicide and you don't know anyone that's personally that's ever done it. And my brother's a normal person, and he was a great big brother. People that have mental illness, it's not always apparent. You don't always see it. And so I just hated that was his lasting image. And it's a hard topic. I've gotten a lot more comfortable with it and telling people and being open about it. And I think in a lot of cases it's brought a lot of people, connected me with a lot of people where they feel like they can reach out and say my girlfriend who was at my brother's memorial came up to me and she's like, I've never told anyone, but my cousin committed suicide. And it was, so just connecting with other people, because it's unfortunately a lot more common than we make it out to be. And in a lot of cases, it's people that are very loved and have nice lives. The couple of things that have resonated with the past few years and things I've learned about people who are survivors of suicide, so family members of those who have committed suicide, is that people who commit suicide don't realize how much pain their family members are going to go through. And as a family member that's gone through it, it makes you so angry at that person. But having to go through that anger and learn about it, just knowing that he did not realize how painful it was going to be. And people who die by suicide, it's a very permanent solution to a temporary problem. So I went back to work, and I was trying to take care of my mom and trying not to lose myself in grief and not cry all the time. And there was a lot of crying at the beginning. And so as I moved into 3 or 4 months after he died, it becomes this, okay, I need to stop. I need to pull it together. And I hadn't ever gone to therapy or anything. I just was like, I'm fine.
You're moving forward.
I'm moving forward. And so I just moved forward. But I think what happened was that my grief was coming out in other ways. So I was very angry, and I've never been an angry person. I was actually just really sad and not telling anyone, because after a certain amount of time, I didn't feel like it was really appropriate to be crying every night. And I never brought up when I was sad, And
that manifests in other ways.
It came out in anger for me. And so I get back to Austin, and I find a therapist, and I completely broke down in their office. And it was so validating to hear somebody that this is their job and their livelihood say, it is not normal what you've been through. It is a lot, and you have had to handle a lot. And it is very normal that you're angry. And so someone just validating those feelings, I mean, almost immediately changed my behavior. Yeah. Just having someone to talk to twice a week. And I still go to therapy. I think there's a lot of really great resources. With the first therapist I saw was, I saw her on a sliding scale. I wasn't making much money at all. Mm-hmm. And so I think there is resources of therapy where you're paying like $20 a session.
Right.
So
you just have to look.
You just have to look at it. Like, that's very important for your mental health. And I think investing in your mental health is really important. So I think there are resources for therapy for people of any income, really. So I think having a community and being open with your friends about how you're feeling. You know, I have a girlfriend that, like, there's days that I don't want to get off the couch. Mm-hmm. And she's like someone I can call and say, I'm not doing anything today. Mm-hmm. Can you please come over and watch movies with me? Yeah. And great. So having a friend like that's not going to judge you for like not getting out of bed, because there's definitely, like, going to therapy changed my life for the better. There's definitely still weeks that I can feel myself going down this slump of like tired and I don't want to get out of bed. And a lot of it's certain times of year that make me more sad than others. And I think knowing that I have a friend that's like okay with me being in that place, not trying to cheer me up, like not like, oh, perk up, it's fine, let's go get drinks or coffee. And she's like, oh yeah, I'll come over and watch TV with you. And she's like, lets me be in that space. Yes. It's really important. Yeah. I've noticed when I'm vulnerable and I share my stories with like a mom that I meet at Harrison School, or, you know, with somebody that I just meet and I'm not having a great week, but I'm open with sharing this story, I can feel like I'm connecting with someone. And a lot of times you don't know what people have gone through. Mm-hmm. So you find out things about people that you wouldn't have otherwise, and you're able to sympathize or empathize, and it becomes this like bonding moment.
Are there just a few things that you could suggest to somebody if maybe one, they just lost somebody, and to how to go and get help even if they don't feel like they want to, and why that's important?
So I think if you're not ready to get help, it's probably best to wait a little bit. Mm-hmm. But making sure you're putting your mental health at the top of every list. Mm-hmm. So in front of like everything else, you need to take time for yourself. If making you feel good is like taking a bath in the middle of the day, or taking a nap, or, you know, you don't make dinner for your kids, you order something, or you just put something on someone else, like a friend or a spouse, like, I can't handle this right now, can you please help me? Right. And asking for help. I wish I would have done more of that in the first year after my brother died.
That's so good. Yes.
So just putting your mental health at the top of your list, mm-hmm. and making sure that's happening in whatever way that looks like for you, because it's different for everybody. It is. I think seeking help when you're ready for it, mm-hmm. You might, even before you're ready for it, if you're just willing to walk into a therapist's office, mm-hmm. do it. Just walk in.
Just make a phone call.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can just make mm-hmm. the phone call.
Yeah, and they have all these, I haven't tried it before, they have all these different resources for therapy now. They have one where you can like text a therapist. Mm-hmm. Try something. Mm-hmm. Just try one thing, and you might not have a great experience. It's taken me over 2 years to find the right therapist for me, but all the other therapists I've seen in the meantime have been great. I just now I found my therapist.
Rachel, I'm just so thankful to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me share my story.
Yes, I mean, to be so vulnerable and open is, you know, going to help so many people, and I'm just thankful for you and your time with us.
Thank you.
I want to thank Rachel Dickson for her time, because at the Men Foundation, we know that by connecting minds and breaking the silence, we can change mental health one story at a time.
They say war is good, but what about for the rest of us? They say I'm too young and too poor to make any waves, but I say this is your day. 'Cause you are